Hey, how's everyone doing? This is the EJ3 of the EJ3 Perspective show. And today I'm just going to sort of talk in a sort of a free-flowing manner about the whole aspect of just women in general, uh, how men perceive women, particularly from selected different countries, and these particular groups of women are from countries that have been, for various reasons, in the news at various times and popular at various times in the past in terms of a place where, the women were perceived as the ultimate, and it was the place where men would need to go there to get, quote unquote, the perfect woman, etc. So I'm just going to address that and just talk about it, and then if anybody, as always, feels free to give your input into it or your experiences or whatever. So again, this is EJ3 Perspective of the EJ3 Perspective show. I welcome you, and let's get it going. So, I've had videos in the past where I was specifically more in line of talking with my travel experiences, and this is primarily when I had made several trips to Brazil between the years of 2009 up until approximately 2014, and toward the earlier years of my travel experiences there, like 2009, that's when the whole uh, Brazilian thing, go to Brazil, the women were the ultimate. We know the deal, they're beautiful, they treat men better than any other women, the whole nine yards of things that we've heard. I don't need to rehash that. And what I found is that when I went there, as I've indicated in previous videos or whatever, I mean, yeah, there were many women that were beautiful, but many of the other women were just in various degrees in terms of physical appearance of just being average. And average doesn't necessarily mean bad. I mean, most people are average, just like the whole thing of, when they have this sort of tangential, like when they say that all black people look alike, that expression that some racists may say, but really, all people really look alike. I mean, that's why they had the other expression of, like, there's a twin of yourself someplace or more than someone, because there's only a very few variations of looks, so even within a different racial group or ethnicity, a lot of people are going to have some similarities in appearances because of the genetic component or whatever. But at any rate, I'm sort of going off base with that. But, it was an overrated experience in terms of that regard. I mean, as I indicated, the women in Brazil, in terms of physical appearances, some were very beautiful or very attractive or whatever, but most would fall into the average range, average attractiveness or whatever, pretty cute or whatever. But I mean, I could say the same thing here in America for Black American women or Latinas in the United States, Asian women in the United States or whatever. They would fall into the same range, So, I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer when you think about it. But I mean, a lot of times when there are these waves, and like I said, at that particular time period, it was the Brazilian wave. I'll refer to it that way. Everybody was flocking to see if the grass was greener on the other side. Now, the whole aspect of, well, at that particular time period, the perception is that, well, the Brazilian women treat the men better, and, they're better than what American women would do or whatever. But there's some things that come into play with that. And one thing is that in any place, if any man from a different country, and particularly United States, and because of the stature of the United States, the standing, etc., if you're from the United States, if you're a Black American, basically, if you're whatever race or ethnicity if you are, but I would say primarily if you were a Black American and to a lesser degree a white American, someone that's clearly defined as white, non-distinctive, have any ethnic features that might be similar to the characteristics of the country of Brazil, you're always going to have initially sort of like that oddity, factor, and also the perception that you're rich, and so that curiosity factor for the native women there, Brazilian women there, for some, that would be something that would like make you more interesting, at least in the short term. Now these are just for women that don't have an agenda or whatever, than you would for their other men. Just like the same thing if some Brazilian men or some Brazilian women, were exchange students and came to a high school or whatever, and for the there's sort of a different perspective. So, yeah, I mean that's it's just a natural phenomenon. If it's something new, I mean it's just like if you go in still using the school analogy, like if different high school is playing another high school and you're going to visit that high school, your football team is playing, and then the girls see some guys that are in the opposite side of the stands or whatever that might be physically attractive or whatever, initially might say, "Oh, this guy looks good." It's a different experience or whatever. So that's one part of it. Then obviously the more sinister aspect would be like if there are individuals, again going back to Brazil, women that are looking at the financial aspect of like trying to get money from a American tourist or European tourist or whatever, and so they use the myth in a way to try to get over in terms of like cashing out and getting gifts and other things of that nature. And sometimes, I mean, it was depending on the financial circumstances of the women involved. I mean, I've talked about that before. Like if they're from a poor section of like say in Rio de Janeiro, from the favelas or any other cities, the favelas or whatever, they're going to try to get a comeuppance and try to utilize that myth, or try to utilize that myth, the women that had that mindset. So uh, those were the true proof reporting factors. But like what I found was is that, and as I've stated in other videos before too, I got a chance to opportunity to meet some Brazilians and actually become acquainted with them, and a few of them, sort of as time has gone on since I haven't been there or whatever, I still remain in contact with or whatever. You just find that, just as I've stated before, they're just like anyone else, other than the language barriers or whatever, or cultural perspective, because obviously, well, not obviously, but the instances of the individuals that I met, even though I've somewhat have a moderate, or at one point I had a moderate degree of fluency in Portuguese or whatever. I was never, could I say I was fluent or whatever. So I'm saying now that to say is that the people that I've met and kept in contact with, they knew varying degrees of English, so I was able to communicate with them. Excuse me. So they're just like anybody else. I mean, in the sense of like the personalities as I've gotten to know them or whatever, their unique personalities, and like as I indicated, other than obviously their cultural and social perspective of where they're from and where I'm from, they would be just like I would consider, or I do consider them just like any other friend that I might have met, or associate or acquaintance, whatever the level of the relationship is for each of the individuals in question. It's the same as it would be in the United States. Now, I've also have visited the country of Curacao during those years when I had the opportunity to travel a lot. And the same thing, I mean, I didn't really meet as many people in Curacao as I did in the cities of Brazil, because I wasn't there as long, and it was just one visit to Curacao. But it's the same thing. I mean, excuse me. It's just a matter of like people are people, basically. And it seems like such a basic concept, but I think people really get, or some people really get caught up in the media representations of things. And, you read these articles. I mean, and some people I think were somewhat unscrupulous in terms of like exaggerating, the benefits and how easy it was to establish relationships or whatever, which is not, it's not like that. I mean, if you really want to get a relationship with anyone, anywhere, whatever, once you get past the superficialities, and it's something that's going to be long standing, then of course, you're going to have to deal with realness on both sides. So that was my perspective. It's sort of, and then the final aspect that I would just say is that it's just like the person that wrote that book from several years ago, where they talked about, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. that whole aspect. I mean, there's certain emotional and conceptual concepts that women have. I mean, basically a genetic thing, I think, that, how some things are perceived many times are different, and it goes beyond just the barriers of the borders of countries or whatever. I mean, it's just, sometimes just in a general sense, you know, women have a different way of perceiving things as opposed to men, and that's just a reality or whatever. So a person going to Brazil, or a person going to Mexico, or a person going to Curacao, or to Dominican Republic, or to Algeria, or any place, whatever, Paris, France, whatever, it's still going to be the same once you get into it, once you get into the reality of it, of a real relationship, and not something that's superficial or something where there's an agenda involved, excuse me. So that's my perspective on that. I mean, if you're going to get into a relationship, or if there's someone that interests you or whatever, and they're from a different country, and don't think that the grass is always greener. You like what you like, or it seems like something might develop or whatever, and you just take it from that perspective. That person is that person that you're getting to know, that you seem to like, and you might want to get to know better. Don't think that just because they're from this country, or that they're automatically going to like you, or make the assumption that they're this way or that way because you're quote unquote an American, whatever your racial or ethnic background is. So I just want to share that with you. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it, women as well as men. So again, this is the EJ3 of the EJ3 Perspective Show. As always, I wish you peace and positivity. Take care until the next time.